$100 over my assigned net county cost. The 9,400 has been achieved by my staff all agreeing to take a combination of MTO and VTO in order to avoid having to lay off anybody in my office. Quite frankly, I can't envision being able to provide the services that I'm required to provide if I have to do it with less staff. As it is, there's a number of things that aren't being done that we're going to have to get to eventually, but there's just not enough hours in the day in order to get done what we need to get done. So my budget is the position that it's in is a reflection of the economy, and I don't really have a lot of control over that. So.
And it's noted in your memo that says you're in dire need of one more position.
Absolutely.
But, the likelihood of things getting significantly better in a 9-10 budget. Are you prepared to go through the end of this year and the next year at the staff you have right now? With the staff I have, we'll have to. Yeah. I mean, we just work extra hours to get it done. Thank you. Any comments from Supervisor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ford, I appreciate your memo, your brief, succinct memo. And obviously you had a smaller budget shortfall than some of the other ones we're talking about here today. But I appreciate your approach, and I appreciate particularly the first sentence where you say, you have asked that I report to you my plan to close my 2008-2009 budget shortfall. So I appreciate that because I think it recognizes the budgetary authority of the board, and that we asked all of the various divisions, departments that had overages projected in their budgets to come forward and explain to us what they were going to do to close that shortfall. So I think the approach you've taken is a good one. I mean, you've tried to get an internal consensus, which I guess you have achieved with respect to how you're going to do a budget balancing strategy to not have to have any layoffs. And I also appreciate that you're saying you're in dire need of one more position. I feel that my understanding from recollections of discussions with your predecessor is that the auditor's office is actually operating with far fewer staff than you had a decade or more ago. Absolutely. And so I mean, I appreciate the measures that you're taking, and then you're saying, I've done the following things, and I still expect that my budget shortfall will be approximately $9,400. I think that's reasonable. I don't think anyone on the board is expecting we're going to reach 0-0 for every various scenario, small and large departments. So I think that overage of the 9,000 plus is reasonable. You've given the explanation of your budget receives a percentage of supplemental taxes for the administration of the program. So I think that you have done the due diligence and the request and have met what the board asks you to do. So I appreciate your approach to a difficult problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Even though the numbers are relatively small, I commend you for basically you've closed your budget shortfall gap by 80%. I mean, and I realize it doesn't come without some. I have a very, very helpful staff in that they recognize that we want to keep the people that we have, and we do have one new person in there, and we just as soon keep her if we can. Yeah. And they've all volunteered to do the extra day. Although SEIU has agreed to 11 days, my SEIU staff has agreed to do 12 days in order to keep from laying off somebody. Certainly shows you have a great team over there. I certainly do, and I appreciate them. Yeah, we appreciate them too. Thank you. Thank you, Meredith. Okay, planning and building.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. At the last meeting, you had asked that we come back to you with a proposed plan, and planning and building has a projected shortfall of $411,000. And again, to remind the board why we're facing a projected shortfall is primarily due to the loss of anticipated revenue from the construction industry, building and planning and so on. So what we looked at, we have three alternatives, and the first alternative deals at the projections as well as additional revenue that we could bring to the county, and that would be additional revenue through vehicle abatement, through expired permit revenue, through line item savings, as well as the cancellation of a contract with an existing contractor that is helping with the Ukiah Valley Area Plan. And so with that first alternative, we're able to achieve a $141,400 savings along with revenue. That still leaves us a shortfall of $269,600. We then move into alternative 2, which not only proposes this additional revenue and savings, but I'm also bringing to the board a reduction of 5 positions, which is a reduction of 16% of my staff. Okay, so in looking at that, that's a combination of the first alternative and as well as the 5 positions.
So Nash, that's where you come up with 141,000?
The 141,000 is additional revenue and savings in the department.
So that's what you're...
And that's what I'm proposing under the first alternative,
Okay.
which does not include staff reductions. That's just a savings and additional revenue that we're projecting.
So that's
Again,
option 1?
That's the first option. The second option considers this additional revenue as well as savings, but I'm also, in the second alternative, proposing the reduction of 5 positions. And again, those would be straight across in all the divisions. So that in itself brings this combination of what I call 1 and then this alternative 2 to a savings of $219,349. Okay, that still leaves me a shortfall. So what I do now, as the board had requested, bring ideas and bring alternatives, the third alternative not only looks at the first one with the savings, but it also looks at further staff reductions. So I'm, under the third alternative, I would propose an additional 7 positions for a total of 12 positions plus the first item of 141,000. That actually brings me to $321,810, but it still leaves me a shortfall of $89,189. And again, I'm just one of the byproducts of the economy that is dependent on the revenue from construction projects that are coming in. The board had asked me to come and propose and bring alternatives, and this is basically what I'm able to do at this point.
Of the 3 alternatives, which would you recommend?
Which would I recommend? Well,
None of them, huh?
I don't recommend any of them, but I would look at the board considering alternative 1 and alternative 2.
Supervisor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that first, Mr. Gonzalez, we need to recognize that you didn't create this budget. You inherited this budget because you
That is
arrived
correct.
a short time ago with a number of things coalescing at the same time. The downturn in the severe downturn of the economy in late 2008 was about when you arrived. So I think that option number 1 absolutely makes sense as the kind of first level of constraint and reduction of expenditures that we need to look at. I have a couple of questions about alternative 2. You don't delineate which 5 positions, and so that is my first request, is to know, and that is that's pretty severe. That's 16%, as you mentioned, of your department. Do you perceive, with the information we're going to be receiving, and obviously you've done some projections for 09-10, would this take you forward as being, if you will, a permanent or a long-term reduction of those 5 positions within your staff? In other words, would you need to, as a budget balancing strategy for 09-10, need to go forward with alternative 2 into the future?
In order to try to close the gap